PSG Review, the show enjoying the start of the preseason, a little bit of Olympic football and in equal measure, waiting for something to happen. We have something now, so good to have you here with me. This has been such an unusual July. We are now at the beginning of August with very little to show for it, or we were, but now it's time for some action.
You are listening to PSG Review. Here's your host, Mikko.
Welcome to the show, and right now I'm here with journalist Lee Davey. He's a writer and broadcaster for TalkSport, Sky Sport and Ligue 1. He also has his own channel on YouTube, The Blueprint with Lee Davey, which you can find also on Instagram. Also, of course, a returning guest here on PSG Review, and I'm always happy to have you joining me. How is the summer treating you, Lee?
Very well, very well. Nice and hot here in the UK at the moment, which is something that we don't say too often. But yeah, I'm having some nice downtime, enjoying a bit of time away from the craziness of football before the season starts. So yeah, enjoying it. Thank you very much, and thanks for having me back.
It's all good. How did you find the Euros, Copa America? Are you following any of the Olympic football? You know, the summer stuff.
Yeah, I obviously watched the Euros. Obviously, England got to the final, and so there was a lot of interest here in the Euros. A little bit of Copa America, obviously the time difference can make things a little bit difficult, but I did keep up to date with that. Obviously, you know, part of my job is to make sure that, you know, we know what's going on, and, you know, first thing in the morning when the results come in and people want to see the news. And I've seen snippets of the Olympic football. This is usually where I take my downtime from everything, really preparing for the new season. I think that's where my focus lies now, you know, transfers, and just seeing, more importantly, what PSG are doing, and hopefully we'll have some activity in the coming weeks.
Hopefully, even as we are recording in the coming hours. It has been a very slow summer, I think, by any metric. At least certainly it feels like that after last year. Of course, last summer was really quite hectic for PSG. But after we signed a backup keeper that no one had heard of, we have now signed a genuinely exciting young midfielder, yet another Portuguese international for PSG, that João Neves. Now, let me be clear about this because we are recording this episode. There is not yet announcement. He might be actually, as we record, on a flight towards Paris. But the reports, they do seem fairly trustworthy, and the medical should be happening more or less in a couple of hours. But just to be sure, when we are recording this episode, it hasn't yet happened, but when you're listening to it, it might already be announced. I don't know. It looks like a done deal, and I think we have to take the risk to talk about it as if it will be such, and there's not going to be any U-turn with this file. Lee, what kind of hole does João Neves fill in PSG? What do you think about him?
This is one that I'm really excited about. I have watched him on occasions. I have actually seen him in the flesh when he played for Benfica, and you know, certainly the reports are very positive. It always goes back to an interview that I saw with Liverpool's striker Diogo Jota, and it was probably about 2 or 3 months ago, and he was asked who's the next big star to come out of Portuguese football. We know that Portugal have got a great young squad, and certainly, you know, you can see the future's very, very bright for them. And the first person that he said was João Neves. And that got the alarm bells ringing, thinking, I've seen him before. He was impressive. He's got something about him. I was surprised he was 19. I actually thought he was a little bit older, just by his maturity and the way he plays, how comfortable he is on the ball, the way he carries the ball. He starts, you know, he likes to start deep so he can pick the ball up on the edge of his box, and he'll kind of canter forward. He's very small. He's like a pint-sized midfielder, and PSG are not known for big, tall, strapping midfield. First thing you think about is you think of Marco Verratti when you think of João Neves. I think that, you know, there are definitely some similarities between the two, just those quick feet, that tenacity. But I do like him. I like the way he can beat plays. He's got that, you know, he's got quick feet in terms of, he's got a good turn on him. He can move. He's very forward moving. There's no sideways passes. Everything he does is very positive. And I think that's exactly what this team's missing. You know, that bit of tenacity in that midfield, that real bite, but also a real urge to go forward and make something happen from an attacking sense. I think he will be a really, really important addition to this team, and I'm super excited to see what he brings next season.
It's something else, our midfield. I remember a couple of years ago, it's not too long time ago, we essentially had like a one midfielder, Marco Verratti, and I think it was time when, I can't remember if Rabiot was already out or if he was pretty much just sort of ousted from the first team squad. And PSG ended up doing a kind of panic purchase in January, Leandro Paredes. That was a deal that, you know, in the end, it didn't work out so well. But right now we have, in our midfield, we have Vitinha, who is probably very close to being the best player in our current team. Absolutely wonderful player, certainly on his day. Then we have the fresh champion of Europe, Fabian Ruiz, who had an incredible tournament in Germany with his national team. We have, of course, our homegrown talent, Warren Zaire-Emery, who I imagine also is fairly hungry after getting no opportunities during this summer in the Euros. Now, then we have Neves. Ayman Kari is back from loan. Lee Kang-in and Seni Mayulu, admittedly, they might play more attacking. They might not be, they're considered officially midfielders. Whether they actually are, that's another question, how they're used by Luis Enrique. Then we have Gabriel Mochardo, the new guy from Brazil, as well as Carlos Soler and Manuel Ugarte, who are rumored to be on their way out, but nothing yet is finalized with those. That's a lot of players, and it's quite possible, like I said, some will leave, like Manuel Ugarte. There are rumors that he might be going to Manchester United, and now Soler is talked that he could be on his way to Real Sociedad, certainly according to some reports. How do you see our midfields? There's a lot of players there, but what would be the starting midfield for you, and what kind of a rotational options? What do you reckon? I think, for instance, just to say this, there, like Fabian Ruiz has kind of like put his cards on the table. Like he's had a great tournament in the Euros. He had a legitimate shot to be the player of the tournament and that. But for PSG, he's never been quite. He's been good player, but not a brilliant player. Perhaps I could say that. How do you look at this?
Yeah, I think when you look at PSG midfield, there's a lot of bodies in there, and that's something that we've never really had before. We've been in a situation, as you quite rightly pointed out, where it was Marco Verratti and then two or three others who unfortunately didn't complement the level of his talent. Now I think we've got a midfield there which is, really exciting. And, there's a lot of talent there. We've got Vitinha, who, he's going from strength to strength, and he's really one of the players that's benefited from the exits of Neymar and the exit of Lionel Messi in particular. I think that in terms of how this is going to be played this season, I think it's still very much up in the air. And that's, I think, down to the fact that this season, there is no loft. And usually, when PSG have created this loft and they put players into there who they kind of, no longer want or, are happy to kind of push out into the transfer market, it gives you a bit of an idea or a picture in your head of who, the coach is going to put all of his faith into that particular season. But there isn't one. So we don't kind of know how this is going to go. But we have got plenty of bodies in there, but we've got quality as well. And we've got Warren Zaire-Emery, who's, okay, admittedly, I would say he had a very good start to the season. After his injury, he kind of didn't, I think, without being too harsh on him, because as a young guy, he can find the heights of that early part of the season. And, being so young, he's going to have inconsistencies. He's going to have periods where he doesn't quite hit those standards. Hopefully he can come back after a bit of a rest and he can really kick on this season. But I'm really pleased with how the midfield's looking. And going back to what you were saying about Fabian Ruiz, again, I didn't see that performance coming in the Euros. He was fantastic, really energetic. He looked a real threat in front of goal, and you're thinking, well, those of us who watch PSG can see that he takes up very, very good positions just outside the box or inside the box, but he wasn't really finishing those chances. He was missing some real gilt-edged chances last season, and you had your head in your hands just like, Fabian, you've got to put that away, you've got to score that. But he was scoring them for Spain, and he was getting into great positions, and, really good finishing from him. He's got to transcend into his club form. What was quite interesting is obviously when a lot of players play well, when a lot of players, get that little bit of hype, get that exposure, especially at a major tournament, they're immediately linked with a move away, and he was linked, I think, with a move to Arsenal recently. But what I like about Fabian Ruiz is he kind of really quashed those rumours very quickly, and he said, I'm happy in Paris. I've got a contract in Paris and I'm happy there. And that was quite refreshing to hear. Now, there's a month or so left of the transfer window. Anything can happen in that time. And, if he wants to move on, then, so be it. But it was just nice in what's been a tough time for PSG fans when, players have really clambered for a move away from the club. It's actually really nice to see these players that are in great form saying, no, I'm in Paris, I want to stay in Paris. So as long as he wants to be here and if, he can show that form again next season for us, then, we'll be all the better for it, I think.
I really think so, and I don't know to what extent there is the kind of Spanish connection with Luis Enrique that at least they can certainly understand each other's, and Fabian Ruiz had already been in the national team under Enrique also. So there's that. I talked about it in the last episode that this if there ever was a time to cash in on a player, and I'm not saying that this is something that PSG should do or indeed that Fabian Ruiz should leave, but if there ever was a moment, he's really like probably sought after, well appreciated right now after those Euros, and he's getting on with his years and so on. PSG has quite a good midfield. If I'm not saying to sell him, especially if he doesn't want to be sold, but if ever there was a time, this would be it, right? Just to make a little bit of money to maybe strengthen some other areas. But I think there's a good arguments to both directions, and if he doesn't want to go, I don't think that we should push him out.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point there, and like you say, his stock is as high as it's probably been in his career now. And that's the nature of the beast. That's what happens when you perform on the biggest stages. And if he wants to go, then, I don't think any PSG fan will be in a position where they'll kind of, they'll have any difficulties in letting him go. But I think almost what PSG fans would like to see is a little bit of that, what he showed in Spain, again for Spain, a little bit of that next season if he is to stay. Show us, continue that form. Show us what you've showed the world over the last few weeks. Because we've not seen that. We haven't quite seen that yet from him. And whilst there's been bursts of, or snippets of his ability, and we've seen that at times, I don't think we've quite had our money's worth with him yet. So if before he goes, it'd be great if we can see that. If he is to go this summer, one thing for sure is to, we trust in Lucho, we trust in the manager, yeah. And I'm sure he'll get it right. Or he's, alongside Luis Campos, he's got, another plan up his sleeve, whether that's to, use that money to bring in another midfielder or to, as you said, strengthen other areas, because I do believe there are other areas of the team that do need a little bit of work.
Speaking of which, without sounding like it's too forced segue, and it isn't, but incidentally, this is exactly what I want to talk about next. There is one area of our squad on the pitch that really there's almost no rumors, there's no reports about. That's defense, and we had some file that was happening with the young Spaniard Dean Huysen. I'm not quite sure. I seem to be pronouncing his name more in a Danish way, which I don't speak Danish nevertheless, but I don't know what the origin of that name is. Nevertheless, he's now signed with Bournemouth, so it's basically not our problem anymore, the pronunciation. And surely there must be something happening behind the scene. Some dossier developing somewhere under the transfer radars. Skriniar is rumored to be not necessarily a Loft player, but as you were mentioning about the whole Loft situation, but maybe he's not a central, character in this story, at least so it looks now. Whether he stays or goes, his level hasn't quite been up there, what we maybe needed. Maybe his style doesn't quite fit the Luis Enrique style that well. So that is a question. I don't think it will be necessarily very easy to sell him. He has a high salary. That's the nature of these free transfers. Then we have Lucas Hernandez, who will miss at least half a season. That's pretty much given now. Nordi Mukiele might be heading out. We're not quite sure, but he was never trusted by the manager anyways. And on top of which, I just sort of realized that Nordi Mukiele's salary is as much as Vitinha and Fabian Ruiz combined. So he has a very high salary. That is exactly what happens with the free transfer. Well, free transfer, but we end up paying them such salaries that if anything goes wrong, it will be very difficult to sell these players. But that remains a question mark. Nordemu Kiele, who will pay him that money that he's earning in Paris? I don't know. President Kimpembe, very exciting on his way back, but of course we can't be sure about what kind of level, how quick he's going to be back, getting back to his old level. We hope that he will get there. And then we basically have Hakimi as a right back with not really available backup other than Sakwe and perhaps there, and then Nuno on the other side, and then we have Marquinhos, Beraldo and Danilo. It seems absolutely unbelievable that there shouldn't be any kind of work done to find enforcements. There's no news about it, but surely there must be something.
Well, you'd hope so. It is a worrying area enough for the reasons that you've really well pointed out there. We're light in defence, and it's an area I believe that we need a little bit more strength in there. We gave away a lot of silly goals last season, and I will attribute some of that to a completely revamped style of play, and this team will be better now for having spent that year playing this new possession-based pressing style of football. However, there's not enough quality in that defence. Let's say we lose Marquinhos for an injury, which can happen, then we're in a bit of a mess, because, as you said, Lucas Hernandez is going to be out. He might not find anywhere near his form until the end of the season. It's quite a serious injury that he's had, so I don't think we should put any pressure on him. President Kimpembe really is about getting back on the pitch, getting some minutes in his legs, starting to kind of build his confidence up. He's had 18 months out with a serious injury. 2 operations, I believe, he's had. No hope should be pinned on him at all. And I think we'll see the best of him maybe next season after he's got through this season and, injury-free. Skriniar, I think we can all see there's a lack of speed and mobility there. But a guy who's on quite a big contract is not going to want to leave Paris in a hurry. He's got a very good contract there, as you quite rightly pointed out. And, it might be difficult to get rid of him. It might end up being a loan or, but he certainly wants to prove himself, which, okay, that's a good thing. But he's got to improve his level. He's got to improve his level very, very quickly, because last season he simply wasn't good enough before and after his injury. So that leaves us with Lucas Beraldo. And again, someone who's adjusting to European football, adjusting to life in Paris, showed at times he's got something. But again, if we're putting our complete and utter trust in him, I'm not quite sure that would be a wise move. He's been deployed at left back at times. Again, no Lucas Hernandez to cover at left back next season. Beraldo's been there. He's looked uncomfortable at left back. He hasn't looked, he's filled in there to do a job, but it hasn't been one that I would call an efficient job. And obviously at right back, we're struggling if we're using Hakimi, who played the majority of the games last season. He's currently playing Olympic football right now. There's a lot of football in these players, and we can't just use the same 4 players across the board. We're going to find ourselves in a mess. We need to bring in a hybrid player. We need to bring in someone who can play centre back and fullback. Again, a little bit like Lucas Hernandez, someone who can fill in, who can play that kind of versatile role. Another centre-back for me is needed if Skriniar's not to Lucho's liking. Another one needs to come in. So it's a little bit worrying for me that we're in the 1st of August now, and we've not really, made any movements on any centre-backs or any defensive-minded players. What I do know is that it's been a really busy summer of football. It's still going on now. It's like the season never ended. And we know that, on these busy summers, is that sometimes these deals take a little bit longer to come through. You've got, for example, Desiree Doué, who wants to wait till after the Olympics to make his decision. We may talk about that later. I won't speak any more about that right now. But there are players who, are still in action or on their holidays or have not quite made their minds up yet. So I'm hoping that PSG can do something defensively, because I would hate to get to the end of the transfer window and go with what we've got. I wouldn't feel confident in that.
That's absolutely so true, and I think that this is one of the things you were mentioning about Lucas Hernandez, how useful player he is, because he can play a few different positions there. So those are the kind of players that are very valuable, because no matter who is injured or no matter who is suspended or whatever happens, there's going to be something where they can be useful. And this is where it's real shame, because another one of those players would be Nordi Mukiele. Now, I've been saying many times in the show, I actually quite like Nordi Mukiele. I think he's quite versatile defender. He's a solid defender. He's not a world-class defender. He's not a world-class centre-back, also not a world-class left-back or right-back, but he can play those positions to a certain standard that is fairly high, and if everything else works around him, he's not going to necessarily be the person who's going to let the team down. So he can do a very professional job. He's very physical. He's quite fast. He's good in defense, which is not something that, for instance, Nuno Mendes or Hakimi essentially are. That's not primarily what they are, good in defense. They are more attacking minded and great at that. But he can still, like Mukiele, can still do some stuff. But basically, he can play any position in defense. Now, if we don't want to have him, then we don't want to have him. There was rumors about his, antics in the Parisian nightlife. I don't know anything about those things. Those have been mentioned. But I would like to think that if that was the problem, and if Enrique would say to him that, listen, you need to stop this. So if he doesn't stop that, then okay, I understand. If he does stop them, then I also think that he should be giving a new chance. But if Enrique just feels like he doesn't fit the system that he wants to do, then okay, it's fine. But we really are under some amount of pressure, I would say fair amount of pressure, to find some solutions, because this currently, like we've been talking now, it's not good enough. I would say that we need a starting level centre back, like a proper centre back, and if they can play something else, then that's fine. But I think Marquinhos is he's a starter. He's a starting level centre back. But then I agree with you what you were saying about Lucas Beraldo. Very talented, quite skillful, good on the ball, very promising, but not there yet, not ready yet. He's still a young player, still getting used to this thing, and we don't know. We might be that in 3 months' time I'm going to apologize for ever uttering these words, but there's a chance that it's gonna take a little bit more time. And any injury is going to be, at this current rate, any injury would be catastrophic. It's a little bit complicated thing, and of course, Skriniar, I guess, one of those players that if we played with back three, he could find maybe a more natural position for him, but that's not something that seems to be happening. And then how that would impact the midfield, which is very stacked for us anyway, and all that. So I think that when it comes to defense, that is the biggest question mark of PSG for the next, what is it, 1 month? We have 1 month left of the transfer window, and nothing that has been outwardly reported. Do you have any names in mind that could work for our defense?
I've seen some links actually with the young Dutch right back, the guy at Feyenoord. Is it Geertruide? Young guy out of Feyenoord, and again, admittedly, I've seen snippets of him. I've not seen too much of him, but very highly rated. And he played for the Netherlands at the Euros, and he was a backup for Denzel Dumfries. And his name's been linked. So going back, to your versatility, I think he seems to be an option. There seems to be some potential interest in him. But as a centre back, I like to. I guess for me, my first go-to now is to think Ligue, and I always quite fancied the thought of Lenny Yoro coming in. Obviously, he's gone now, and unfortunately for him, he's got a bit of an injury. He's going to leave, it's going to put him out for a few months. So it's a bit of we've missed that one, and I guess it's it's a bit of a blessing considering how it's worked out for him. But there's some good defenders in Italy. I think you just look at people like Calafiori, who's going to Arsenal. I always look to Italy when I think centre backs have always produced quality centre backs, as have the French. But I don't know, there's nobody that's really kind of sticking out at the moment. I've always liked Gleison Bremer at Juventus, Brazilian guy. I've always followed him from his time at Torino. Good, solid, would certainly form a good centre-back partnership with Marquinhos. They know each other from the national team. I don't know how if Juventus would be willing to part with him or whether even PSG would be interested. But he's that real solid presence, really quick, very speedy, and certainly would be someone that would be able to come in and deal with the pace and power of the strikers in Ligue. So yeah, he would, for me, would be a really solid option. I quite like him. But as I said, we've got to trust in Luis Campos. He's pulling out a few gems. I'm sure he'll be able to. There must be someone in Portugal. You know, he does a lot of his shopping in Portugal. I know that is it Antonio Silva at Benfica, who's very highly rated. I'm not sure how many times we can keep going back to Benfica, but you know, hopefully he's got a few aces up his sleeve and can bring in somebody who's, as you say, a starting centre-back, because as it stands right now, there's not enough there. It is slightly concerning. I look at the age of Marquinhos, and we're so heavily reliant on him staying fit now, but he's 30, 29, 30, and naturally when you get to that age, you start to pick up more muscular injuries. It's just, that's the way the body works, unfortunately. That's the biomechanics, and hopefully he can stay fit, because we are really, really relying on him now as a senior figure in the defence to play the majority of the games, especially the big games. So we really do need to keep him fit.
I'm going to now say something that I don't necessarily stand behind 100%, but just as a thought experiment, right? We're talking about also Marquinhos' age now, and with Marquinhos, there's also leadership. Now, one thing that PSG has been losing in the last couple of summers is a lot of leadership. There was a time when we had the captains of Real Madrid and Barcelona playing in our team, and Spain and Argentina and France and Brazil and all of that. And these days we have far fewer of those. Actually, I think maybe Donnarumma is the only captain of a national team that we might have. But there's few players that would be available, aged players, for centre backs. Pepe and Hummels. I'm not saying that we should necessarily go with them, because PSG project is the young players. It's a future. But considering how we are losing a lot of experience, a lot of maybe that kind of mental leadership that might come in handy. It's a lot of young people. They need also a little bit guidance. So I'm not saying that we should try to get those players. I'm just playing and toying with the idea that what if PSG got like a 1-year deal or 2-year deal with one of these elder statesmen of European football. Do you think that there would be any sense in that, or is that just sort of like maybe an idea in theory but not in practice?
Well, you would have hoped that Skriniar would have presented that. I'm not saying, Skriniar's not exactly in his mid-30s, but that experience, that know-how, championship winner in Italy, multiple titles. You would hope that he was the man to bring that in and to offer that experience to, some of the younger heads. And it hasn't happened. It may be an option that PSG take, but obviously what comes with that is risk. Risk of injury, risk of... in terms of, whether it would be the right fit or not. So it may have to go down that route and, pick up a potential free signing. I'm not sure where PSG's finances are. I know they're a lot healthier after the exit of Kylian, of course, but it depends in terms of where they're looking to invest that money. Now, if we're led to believe by the reports, then it appears that money is going to be reinvested more in midfield and attacking areas. So it might be that PSG opt to go down that route. And when you look at people like Pepe, he's pretty solid. He looks like he hasn't lost any of his pace. When you've seen him at the Euros, he was like, I watched him for Portugal, and he was one of the standout players. I thought he was excellent through that tournament. Mats Hummels, we know, who was the scourge of us, when we go back to... the Champions League game against Dortmund, obviously he scored the winning goal, and he was solid that night. He was solid that night in the park. It's whether he can be solid throughout the whole season. It's whether he can offer something. It's whether he can kind of take that role on if Marquinhos was to get injured. Maybe it might be an option. It's worked for other clubs, hasn't it? Where they, I remember years ago Manchester United bringing in a 34-year-old Laurent Blanc, and he was excellent, before he retired. It does work for clubs. It might be an option. Because, like you say, we're in a position now whereby we have lost leadership. We have lost, senior figures in the team. We've got a really young team now. I think I read last year when we got to the mid to latter stage of the Champions League, we had the youngest average age left in the Champions League. And maybe that cost us a little bit when we got to the semi-final. Maybe that cost us, that little bit of know-how, how to get over the line. So it might help for us to get somebody in who's, been there, done it, knows how to be a calming influence in those difficult times, knows how to, get the best out of certain players when, in those real kind of high octane moments. But yeah, there was a couple of players, like, as you quite rightly pointed out, that are available that might be able to come and do a job, even if it's for a season, which will enable us then to go and work on other targets, improving other targets, the right wing, the left wing, that central midfield, potentially an attacker. But either way, we're going to need some quality and some leadership.
That is the thing, and there's something about it that I'm thinking that it's not really realistic. It's a bit of a silly thought, but then on the other hand, there's something quite tempting about the idea because those are the kind of play. Well, Hummels, I'm not sure if he would even ever want to come to Paris. It's like that a little bit. Like it's the same thing when there's talk about Joshua Kimmich, and that I'm like, I don't think that homeboy wants to come to Paris. I don't think that they like very much the idea of Ligue or Paris or Qatar or whatever. I think it can be one of those things. I don't know. Let me not say more about it because I don't know. It's a speculation. But with Pepe or someone, they don't have to play every match. They don't have to play in the early rounds of Coupe de France. They don't have to be like there all the time. But quite impressive Euros. Certainly Pepe, he's not a young man, and he was really fighting, like he was saying. So that's something. These are the kind of possibilities that could be there, and I really agree what you were saying, that it could buy you that 1 year of building some other file, like some working on some other way, that if you were to make contract, with those players, you would make it on a premise that they will come for a very specific time, they will leave on a free, you pay them what you pay them. This is the arrangement. There's not going to be any that, then we are trying to sell you for more or whatever, or that we're making a long contract and unable to move you on. So it would be a kind of pragmatic deal. Maybe it's a little bit outside of what's likely, but crazier things have happened in football, so you never know about that. We've already been talking a little bit about our attack, our forward players, and I think that's an area of the team where a lot is changed simply by the absence of one player. That's Kylian Mbappe, who's left, and he's been such a central focal point of our attack for so many years now. I have my feelings about him, and then I have my thoughts about him, but let me not get too much into that now, and I've been talking about them in previous episodes, but he's been such a dominant figure that he has made us a little bit predictable. All the balls in the end go to him, and he tries his tricks, and he's just so good that, and many times those tricks work. He scores a lot of goals, so basically what we have now done is that we have lost that amount of goals. I remember when Ronaldo left Real Madrid, it was very difficult for them it's just the number of goals. It's such a huge number of goals that leave. The same thing when Zlatan left PSG. Well, Cavani stood up. Cavani scored a lot of goals the next season, but the problem is that nobody else scored almost any. That was the problem with the first post-Zlatan season also. So now our attack is in a completely new situation. We have players who I'm very excited about. Bradley Barcola, his first season was real testament to his work ethic and also his ability. I think these are two things that are really, like, he's very skillful, but his head is in the right, like he's a strong, mentally strong player. Now we have, of course, also Gonzalo Ramos as a striker. Might he be for the first time really getting his chance to be the starter? We don't know. That's still a little bit up in the air if there's going to be other strikers that are coming. And are we even going to play through a traditional 9 as he is? Because that's another question, that we haven't really been playing through a target player like that in a very long time, not mainly because of Mbappe's presence. Then Dembele, yes, Randal Kolo Muani, he also seems to be staying as far as the reports are going right now. So so there are those players. Then of course Lee Kang-in, he can be used there. Marco Asensio, there are players like that. What do you feel about our attack? There's been talking about Victor Osimhen. Kvaratskhelia was talked about earlier, but that doesn't seem to happen. Jadon Sancho is a name that has been mentioned, but that seems to be like maybe the B or C option or something like that we'll see first, the other ones. And Nico Williams, what a Euros he had. He was really like the most fun player to watch in the Euros. It was absolutely joy to watch, but I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. Anything is possible, but it seems that it doesn't seem very, very likely necessarily. Now also you already mentioned Desiree Doué. That's something that is still up in the air. What does our attack need to not lose the goals that is essentially that are going with Kylian Mbappe's departure?
It's definitely a difficult task. I think we know that. I think we knew that a year ago when we kind of got wind that Kylian wasn't going to extend his contract. How do you replace between 40 and 50 goals a season from one guy? I think the difficulty, and I think we all seen it last season, was that he's preparing for his exit. So you went back to the point of when Zlatan was leaving, you knew that there was a ready-made replacement in Cavani. And that following season, I think he scored an absolute bucket load of goals. So we knew we had a ready-made replacement for him in a different mould, but someone who could almost replace like for like those goals. Unfortunately, this season, Kylian has taken up all of the space, and he's taking up so much of the thinking is that we don't know if Gonzalo Ramos has got 30 goals in him. We don't know if Randal Kolo Muani has got 30 goals in him. And that's the worry. When we're comparing to it, the Zlatan and Cavani era, I've got faith in Ramos. For me, he should be the number 9, the starting striker. I don't credit Kolo Muani as a bona fide, quintessential number 9. I think he's got more variety. I think he's got more attributes in terms of playing wide. He's got more versatility, and that's a great player to have in your team. And I thought he was lively in the Euros. I thought he was a great option for France. I thought he did really well. But Ramos, for me, is a guy that needs an arm around him. He needs to be, told that you're our starting striker, you're the number 9. We're going to put our faith, we're going to put everything in you to fire us to titles. For me, I think we've seen enough from him in the very little time that he had on the pitch to know that he's absolutely deadly in the box. He's good in the air. He finds space. His movement reminds me a little bit of Cavani, his movement, the front post, the back post. He's got what we need. And strikers are a premium. How many really good strikers are out there or available on the market? I mean, there's not even a lot of strikers out there now, those real number 9s. And I think for me, we should, certainly put our faith in him this season. He's going to be the guy, just as long as we play for him, as long as we give him what he deserves, give him that time on the pitch to really develop, because it was a real tough first season for him. But I think he should be commended on his professionalism. Not once did he use his agent. Not once did he use social media. Not once did he speak out of line. Not once did he try and upset anything. He accepted his position, and I think on the basis that he will look to really push on this season, I think he deserves that opportunity, and we should be really focusing on him as a focal point. On the two wings, I think we're in a great position. I think Dembele will hopefully improve further this season. Barcola, I expect to really spring into life with Kylian gone and to really occupy that left side. You've seen it in the Euros, even with Barcola and Mbappe on the pitch. Mbappe would really float over to Barcola's space and almost sometimes take the ball off him. And, I think he's going to have a real freedom to kick on this season, Barcola. So I'm really interested to see what he does without the shadow of Mbappe there as well. But we're going to need some extra quality in there as well. And, I don't know what the future holds for Asensio. I know that, he's become very much a squad player. He's in, he's out. Sometimes he can really sparkle and shine. Other times it can be a little bit underwhelming. I know he's had some injury problems at the start of the season, but I'm not quite sure what his place is. He's great to bring in and, from time to time, but he can come off the bench and make a difference. but I'm just not sure just how much difference he makes or how effective he can be. I've seen him linked with a move to Besiktas. I'm not sure what was in that or whether they'll follow that move up. Jadon Sancho, you spoke about Jadon Sancho. He's obviously had a difficult time at Manchester United, found a bit of his form at Dortmund, was really good against us in that first leg in Germany. He gave Nuno Mendes a real difficult night. And it's just whether he can continue that. That's the thing. If we're going to purchase a player of that type, it can go either way. It's a huge gamble. Will he settle? Will he show another performance like he did at Manchester United? Will he struggle again to find his form? Dortmund seems to be a perfect fit for him for whatever reason, and it's just whether we can come in at Paris and do the same job. He's the type of player that needs to play every week. Needs to have that continuity. Is he going to play in place of Dembele? Is that going to be the case? If he's not playing, he finds himself on the bench, occasionally, and Dembele preferred, what happens then? Will we see a little bit of the old Jadon Sancho in Manchester United where he loses a bit of his confidence? So it's a funny one with him, and you said it seems like a B or a C option. I think that's where it should be for me on this one. If you can get the best out of him and he's going to start every game, I think there's a potential gem there. But you are going to lose pace with him because he's not the quickest. He's tricky with his feet. He's an intelligent player, but you're not going to have that pace in the team that that you're going to have with Dembele, who you knew was lightning quick. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I'd like to see Ramos start. I'd like to see Barcola in there, and Desiree Doué is an interesting one, isn't it? He looks like he's going to make his decision pretty soon on where he'd like to go. I like him. I think he's a great option for PSG. I think he'll bring some skill, some poise, some real quality to that team. I think he's the kind of player that will get fans really on the edge of their seat. Fans will fall in love with him very quickly, and I think he's ready for that big move. I think he's ready to kind of play on the bigger stage. It's just where he wants to play his football, which will be interesting. But I'm sure we'll find out in the next week or so as his Olympic adventure comes to an end.
Absolutely, and I think that one of the things that is there, you were talking about Jadon Sancho, and nobody's really questioning his potential and what he's even already now able to do, but it's the consistency. I don't watch him regularly or religiously in any way. He was very good against PSG, but I kind of had the feeling that those might have been his best matches of the whole season. Whether that's the case or not, that I can't say. I haven't seen that many of his matches, but it was something that another player that is, I think, in the same area is Ryan Cherki. There's been some rumors about that, but these are the players that right now PSG has. I feel like we are in quite a good space in that. Players have got good mentality, and I think these are the players that can really be like, maybe they might have too much of that superstar sort of individual quality where they are like thinking that they shouldn't have to follow all the rules. I feel like Ryan Cherki has been a great talent and potential for quite a few years now, since we saw him coming up first with Lyon. I mean, at least a couple of years already, and I don't think that he has really moved forward very much, not necessarily enough, that is he now that much better than he was at 17? Maybe he is, but there's not that much evidence. Maybe that's also a Lyon question a little bit, but I'd be very wary when it comes to that. But where I fully agree with you, I think is Gonzalo Ramos. I would like to see him being the top person, and players like Victor Osimhen or somebody like that. I don't question their quality at all. Of course, great player, but at the same time, for the amount of money that deal would cost, which is astronomical, is it that much added value to what we already have, and is it worth having somebody like Gonzalo Ramos as a backup again? I mean, I feel for him. He's been the backup in the national team. He's behind Cristiano Ronaldo, and in PSG he's been behind basically Kylian Mbappe has rendered him a bench player. So I'm hoping to see him and what he could really do. That's certainly something that exists. So these are big questions, and we'll have to see how it goes. But we also have to talk about some of the rumors that come to When it comes to PSG, they also actually are a lot about Ligue 1 right now. You were talking about Desiree Doué, and I'm kind of like taking that on. It seems to me that some of these things, like I said, it's not just about PSG, it's about Ligue 1. Because it seems now Xavi Simons, he doesn't want to play in Ligue 1. It might be more complicated than that, but I think that he doesn't want to play in Ligue 1. Lenny Yoro, you mentioned, he's moved to Manchester United already. PSG was after him, although today the reports are suggesting that PSG was aware of his fragility, which, could be true also because it's not like Luis Campos doesn't have his, I'm sure there's somebody in the Lille dressing room who is gonna, who he can ask some pointed questions when it comes to these things. But Lenny Yoro, he didn't want to continue with Ligue 1. I think it was between Real Madrid and Manchester United. An argument could be made, and again, it's not as simple as this, but I think Kylian Mbappe didn't want to play in Ligue 1 anymore, and I'm fine that he's gone. But it's like, I think that winning the Golden Boot every year and just, I don't think that he just wanted to be there anymore. And then there's this difficult TV deal negotiation, TV rights, international and so forth. I feel like Ligue 1 needs a win. Like we are kind of like in a situation where we have to like look beyond just PSG and also say that, okay, how can the dominant position that PSG has, how could that help French domestic football? Maybe Desiree Doué, it can sound like, okay, well, how does getting this promising player from a rival team to us, how will that help French football? Well, by keeping him in the French football, by keeping him in Ligue 1. What do you think? Is this increasingly a consideration? I think with Lenny Yoro, it really came to my mind is that I think that everybody needs to start thinking about these things and not just sort of like trying to work their contracts to the end and then go on a free transfer to somewhere, because that's going to be very difficult for French football. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. This is something I've been speaking about for a few weeks in terms of, we'll just kind of roll back to Real Madrid's recent transfer strategy. Obviously, they're pushing for a European Super League because they can't compete with the finances of the Premier League, so they're going to look at other options. Now, Real Madrid has a real allure about it. It has that, that huge club feel, and, in their eyes, every player wants to play for them. So they use that to almost kind of bring players in, to suck players into kind of like this whole Real Madrid world of thinking, and this is the greatest club in the world. And, there's probably some truth to that. But what I don't like about it is the situation of where they're trying to come to Ligue 1 and they want to take Ligue 1's, biggest talents for free in a league that has struggled after the collapse of Media Pro just a few years ago. And obviously the real struggle that these clubs have had in spending money. And we know that Ligue 1 relies heavily on its youth system. That's why it's called the League of Talents, because, they put their faith in their youth system and bringing players through and giving them opportunities, only then to sell them off for a profit. And then they will go through the production line and they'll bring another talent in. So profit is off their youth system is a massive kind of method of operating for Ligue 1 clubs. But what I don't like is what Real Madrid are trying to do here. I mean, you want to do that in the Premier League or Serie A or whatever it is, that's fine. Right, but you're doing that to clubs like Lille when there wasn't even a TV deal in place for the current season. Yes, that appears to be in place and certainly just dotting the I's and crossing the T's in relation to that at the moment. But what I don't like is that approach. And I think, him going to Manchester United, Lenny Yoro going to Manchester United was the best move. It might not have been his favoured move at this point. And I think that if you gave him the choice, it would have been Real Madrid. But right now, Lille needed that money. They needed that £60 million, and I'm glad that money's gone back into the football club. The same can't be said of Kylian Mbappe. Obviously, his way out was to leave on a free transfer, and that's his prerogative. Yes, he's entitled to do that. Of course, that's what the rules stipulate. But I do think it's important. The more important thing is how you leave a club as opposed to how you find a club. And especially when it's your hometown club. Now, Kylian Mbappe's done nothing wrong. He's well within his rights to leave the way he's left. But I do think there's a duty to leave your club in a specific way, and especially for the amount of investment that's gone into that player. And obviously he left for free, and so be it. I think lessons will certainly be learned by the senior figures at Paris Saint-Germain for this whole episode with Kylian Mbappe. But yeah, you spoke earlier about, right, Desiree Doué, it's vital that we keep players like that with that kind of talent in the league. Now, people are seeing all what this guy's about, and it'd be a shame to lose him to Bayern, really. Bayern have got a lot of good young talent. They've just picked up Michael Olise from Crystal Palace, and, they've got a lot of good young talent coming through there as they start to lower the age of their squad. But he needs to stay in Ligue 1, because I don't think going from Rennes, where he's played well and he's done some really good stuff there, I think the next logical step for him would be to win trophies in France, and that's something he hasn't done. So it'd be nice for him to stay in Ligue 1, maybe to go to Paris Saint-Germain. It seems the most logical option alongside Bayern, and hopefully we can get the deal done and done sooner rather than later. I think it'd be a fantastic addition to PSG. But also got the opportunity to be the real poster boy for the league, because we don't have one at the moment. Kylian's gone now, Messi's gone, Neymar's gone, and it's a real opportunity for him alongside Barcola to be the real faces of the football league. And he won't get that at Bayern. He's not going to be that in Germany, but he'll get the opportunity to play, to feature, to develop, and to play in the Champions League, more importantly, and play a leading role in the Champions League. So hopefully he will choose that. He will look at what's happened with Bradley Barcola and how his career's just literally gone on an upwards trajectory since he left Lyon, got into the Euro 2024 squad, featured in the tournament, and it'll be, hopefully you'll be looking at that and thinking, well, that's where I want to go, that's what I want to do. And I don't think there's a better place for him to be right now for a young player than PSG. I wouldn't have said that to you 3 or 4 years ago. But now this new project, this new direction is really, if you're a young player and you want to develop, especially a young French player, I think this is a really exciting place to be. And Ligue 1 is still an exciting league, in my opinion. And it's still a league with so much talent in that you can really showcase yourself. Remember, it's one of the most scouted leagues in the world football. Whatever anybody thinks about it, whatever derogatory remarks people make about Ligue 1, it's a very highly scouted league and a very technical league. And I think he can further develop at PSG, and I hope he does. I just want to make a point very quickly on Ryan Cherki. This is the guy I really want to be successful. He broke through, some years ago now as the next big thing, but it's never really worked out for him at Lyon. I know he's had 1 or 2 injuries and he's fell out of favour with 1 or 2 Lyon managers. And look, it's not been a period of stability at Lyon, although it seems to be, things seem to be slightly turning on that front. But he just feels like he needs a change of scenery. He needs to go and experience something different. I know Dortmund were interested in him. PSG remain interested in him. That rumour doesn't seem to be going away. And I'm just wondering how we'd fit in at PSG. Maybe he needs a bigger platform, a bigger place to play. He's got undoubted talent. We've all seen just how technically gifted he is. But we just need him to come out and be consistent. We need to maybe give him a bigger stage to go and perform on. It's, for me, and the price that Lyon are willing to sell him at, it feels like a low-risk option compared to somebody like Jadon Sancho, for example. I'd like to see what he can do at a different club, at a bigger club, at a club competing for honours, at a club where the standards maybe are higher, and he has to perform week in, week out to earn his place, to be a part of the club. I wonder if that'll make him step up a little bit and show that little bit more consistency, because undoubtedly he really is a talent, and he's still young. We'll see what happens with that one, but I wouldn't rule out seeing him in Paris, to be honest with you. And like you say, it'd be a cut price option compared to somebody like Jadon Sancho.
I think so, and I think what is very interesting to me about, if you're thinking about this summer, is that from that last season's under 21 French national team, the players who made from that team to the Euros, to the first team, were Warren Zaire-Emery and Bradley Barcola. Emery had, of course, made his debut in the first team already before that, but essentially he's kind of coming from that. It was not in any way guaranteed that it would be him, and then there are a lot of players there who are playing for that team who were not actually anywhere near the selection, no matter how they would have been playing there. So there's something to be said about this, and in some ways I think that when I as a PSG fan say this, it can sound to a lot of people very irritating, but the same way like that German football, oftentimes it's been seen that German football is doing as well as Bayern is doing, that it's a kind of like the thing that pushes it and pulls it up and helps it to develop, to kind of like provides it some layer of protection from the other fluctuations of the football markets and otherwise. It just is one of those things that happens like that. Now, Bayern, of course, is an old traditional club, and I think that with PSG, you have to pay a little bit with the branding of it being a newer club and maybe like nouveau-ish, not quite the same thing. But I think that it would be nice to see PSG being able to do something. And I'm not saying this with arrogance. I'm not saying this, but because we all see that, okay, there is an imbalance, financial imbalance. Now, what was happening also is we were talking about Lyon, we were talking about Ryan Cherki, we were talking about other things, but you mentioned that it hasn't been a period of great stability. However, you phrased it very nicely. In Lyon in the last couple of years, their owner, John Textor, came out two guns blazing against Nasser a week or so ago, 2 weeks, whenever it was, very recently, then in July. Quite strong fighting words. I was thinking to myself that, okay, well, he wants a piece of the action because, of course, the biggest, most famous duel in French domestic football is Le Classique, and there you have PSG and Marseille, but not Lyon. So maybe he wanted to create some kind of a more of a event around that rivalry, which to me certainly is alive and well in women's football, but not so much in men's football. It seems that it's a little bit more lukewarm. So maybe it was that. But what do you think about the Textor's antics?
Yeah, I think he's got previous with this, hasn't he? He's very outspoken. He's obviously involved in multiple football clubs. I know he's got himself into a little bit of trouble in Brazil from various comments that he said there. So anybody that knows him will know that this is not out of the ordinary. This is very normal for him. I think some of it's born out of frustration. I think he wants to really create some kind of rivalry, or certainly wants to challenge. It's his way of saying, right, we're coming for you, PSG. And it's quite interesting it's come at a time when Kylian Mbappe's left the club, in the sense of, right, looking at it from the sense of PSG have now weakened. Right, now we're going to put our foot down on the pedal and we're going to kind of push and see what we can do to destabilise the PSG, almost monopoly, as league champions. So it doesn't, over the last few years, there hasn't been too many kind of contenders. Lens went close recently, a couple of years ago. Lille won the title, but PSG have by and large been the dominant force. But I think that now, with the three main players, Mbappe, Neymar and Messi, completely gone from the club, I think there'll be one or two club owners in France looking at it and thinking, we can challenge, we can win it this season, we can do it. Their biggest strength has gone, their biggest threat is gone. We can do it this season if we can find some consistency from the start of the season and stay neck and neck with PSG up until maybe, February time, when they're in the business end of the Champions League. We can overtake them, we can push, we can beat them. So I think there's a bit of optimism. I think it's born out of optimism with John Textor. I think that Marseille will be looking at this season. They've made a few additions. They brought in, probably one of their smartest signings is bringing in De Zerbi as manager. And I think they will have one eye on really pushing PSG as far as they can go. So it's going to be an interesting season. And I think, as I said, there'll be a few clubs dreaming of pipping PSG to the title this year. So even more so because PSG haven't really done anything in the transfer market. So they'll look at PSG as quite, very, very weakened compared to how they finished the season last term. So, yeah, I think there will be certainly an intrigue as to how this season is going to pan out. But as you know, and as we've already discussed earlier, a month is a long time in the transfer window, and I expect PSG to go big. I really do. I think there'll be some very, very interesting signings, and that might just alter the mood a little bit by the time we get to the end of the window. So as it stands right now, I think certainly Lyon will see themselves on an even keel with PSG, or slightly maybe just behind, but certainly enough to ruffle a few feathers or upset PSG this season. But I think that leads into kind of what's going to happen. I think it's going to be a really interesting campaign. I think that I'm really looking forward to it, probably more than any other season, actually. I'm really interested to see how PSG react to losing, such a prestigious talent in Kylian Mbappe, and how those other players step up. I think it's going to be a really interesting watch, and also interesting to see how this team fares, after a full season of Lucho, what this second season looks like. If you look at teams like Arsenal, who got considerably better, their second season under Arteta, their third season, their fourth season, and now they're a pretty formidable outfit, although not quite over the line yet. I'm interested to see what steps forward this team takes this season. But I'm also interested to see how everybody else steps up in the league. We know that from time to time, clubs have pointed the finger at PSG for, a lack of competition at the top, and, just winning the league at a canter every season. But also, they failed too. PSG have been consistent, not always been brilliant, but been consistent. But there's been a failure on the part of other teams that should be doing better. So I expect Lyon, Marseille, Monaco to be there again. I expect better from them because, when we've got better 3 or 4 teams and big teams in the league all performing, it makes for a better league. It makes for a more entertaining league, a more inclusive league. I want nothing more than a title race. I'd love to see a close 4 title race. It's going to be better for the league. But that can't be just on PSG's shoulders. It has to be on everyone's. Everyone has to play their part in doing that and finding that consistency as well. Because there's enough talent to go around in that league. There really is. I think we've seen that. So hopefully, we have a really great season, and I'm really excited for it.
We have been talking about this before when you have been guest on the show, how we both have a lot of appreciation for Ligue 1, and it is the league also where PSG that we are of course talking about. That's the home base. There's no escaping that. There will never be anything else. Certainly, I don't want there to be a European Super League where PSG would be part of or whatever. This is very important, the domestic league, and when we take off our red and blue spectacles, we have to say that's exactly what we want. Is that we want a good season, highly contested, interesting, race for the trophy, who wins. And then when I put those glasses back on, the PSG glasses, I say that hopefully we win it, even by minuscule margin. But nevertheless, I hope that PSG can win, and I trust that it is very much possible. But it is in all of our interest that Ligue 1 is strong. I think it's nonsense. Some people are like, oh no, Ligue 1 doesn't matter. It's all about Champions League. No, Champions League is, now it's few more matches, but it's still essentially a very small amount of matches per season. And a lot goes into that. There's luck involved about injuries, suspensions, otherwise the draw, there's all sorts of things. But the consistent thing is the domestic league, and I want to see a good competition there. And I would say that about like Textor and other people. It's always the people who are not like, it's not like Lyon has consistently been the second, and the only thing that has stopped them from winning is that PSG has had the investment coming from Qatar and having this kind of like a whole business venture around it. So I understand that they also need to, of course it's fighting talk, it's fine, it's perfectly fine, I don't have a big problem. I thought that it was quite amusing actually, but the thing is that they like you said, they need to find their level, because I think one thing that happened last season, for instance, PSG won the league quite easily, but it was because there wasn't really any other club that could consistently throughout the whole season perform. Nice had a great beginning of the season. Then on the second part of the season, you had other teams who started to come up. Okay, Lyon had a great second half of the season, but they really needed to because the first half was so appalling. But then you had other clubs, Monaco, and there were other ones. So I think that what is needed is a good season. Hopefully, this will start also improving all these things when it comes to the TV rights, everything. We all need that. Let me ask you the last question, which is actually, I first of all, I don't like predictions at all because I think it's like, it's utterly pointless. But I think this is actually very interesting, and I don't hold it against you if you get it entirely wrong. But with Mbappe having left, and we also have 1 month left of the window, so we don't know who is coming. Who do you think is going to be the Ligue 1 top scorer come next end of May or so, the end of the season? Who is going to be the top scorer in Ligue 1 for the next season? What do you reckon?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I'm going to go with Gonzalo Ramos, if he is obviously indeed given that number 9 shirt, if he is given the opportunity to perform week in, week out. I'm going to go with him. He's a born goal scorer. We've seen it at Benfica, and he can score all types of goals as well. Bradley Barcola will chip in with 1 or 2. We need more from Ousmane Dembele, but he will be the main source of goals, I think, for PSG. I'm looking forward to see how the Georgian striker Mkhitaryan gets on at Lyon. That was an interesting move. It looked like he was going to Monaco, but he looked a real threat in the Euros, and I thought performed very admirably in a relegated Mets side as well. So he'll be an interesting one. There's always one that's thrown out there that we don't expect, who will have just a really prolific goal scoring season. It might be one of the new boys, someone from Angers or Auxerre or Saint-Etienne, maybe. But there's always someone. Monaco, again, another team that always seems to be able to unearth a striker, someone who can find the net on a regular basis. We'll see what happens at Rennes. I'm interested what Rennes do. They've just lost Martin Terrier, who is obviously, I know, was injured for a majority of last season, but I'm a huge source of their goals for the last few years. We'll see who steps up. They've got Callum Wendo. I'd like to see him, just be a little bit more prolific in front of goal as well. And also we've got Lens with Will Steele now. There, he's always a manager, makes an impact very, very quickly. And we've got Eddie Wahi there, who has been linked with a move away. So we'll see what happens there again. A team that have done really, really well the last few seasons. But yeah, we'll see how it works out. But I'm going to go for Ramos. Ramos is the guy. I think he's going to finish as a top scorer. I mean, it would just be strange seeing somebody at the top of the scoring charts that isn't Kylian Mbappe. So, it's going to be a strange season all round, I think, but also a really intriguing one. So I'm as excited for this season as I am for any other. I really am. And, I'm hopefully we're going to have a really competitive league. And people might scoff at that a little bit when I say competitive, because PSG usually win the league, by multiple points. But what I mean is competitive is not always the title. The competitive could be the competitive race for Europe or for relegation, which always goes down to the final days, always an intriguing relegation battle. And competitiveness for me is across the league. It's not just doesn't just define a title race. Competitiveness can be, the fight for second place. That's always really a really well fought battle as well. But hopefully we can get it within the title race. And like you say, and we'll get a few new talents now, that will step out of Kylian Mbappe's shadow and really show themselves for what they're worth. And that's what I'm really excited to see, unearthing of, multiple new talents. There'll be people we've not even discussed today that will just come out of, be given an opportunity and shine, and, they'll be worth 50, 60 million by the time we get to the last day of the season. And that's the wonderful thing about this league, is that, things are going to happen that we have no clue about. A new star will be born that they don't even know about right now. So that's going to be, as always, the great thing about this league.
That is the truth. I could not say it better myself. I'm hoping for a great season. I'm very excited. And just to say about that thing, when you're talking about the competitiveness, is that PSG doesn't win the matches like 5-0 or 5-1 or whatever. It's very rare these days. It feels like, in the sort of around the Zlatan's last season, it was happening far more. The numbers were much bigger. PSG was much more dominant at the time, but the matches themselves are contested, even if PSG would end up winning them. Of course, I understand that some people will say that's not quite the same, but there are a lot of leagues where only in Bundesliga, only now after over a decade, Bayern was not the champion, and they had something exciting like that. So we're hoping for a great season to come, and I trust that it will come. Thank you so much, Lee, once again for your insights. They always raise the level of the show when you're here talking about French football, PSG in specific, and more in general, Ligue 1 and all the other things. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. It's been great. Thanks.
Thanks again to Lee Davey, a journalist, a writer and broadcaster for TalkSport, Sky Sport and League On. He also has his own channel on YouTube that is called The Blueprint with Lee Davey, and you can also find that on Instagram. That is, of course, on top of YouTube. Lee is also a recurring character here on PSG Review. I'm always very happy to talk football with him. My name is Mikko. You can find and follow the show on Twitter, as I stubbornly still call it, at PSG Review Pod, and on Instagram and TikTok it is simply at PSG Review. Recommend the podcast to anyone who might be interested in it, as we are gearing up to a new season, and one that will be unlike anything in quite a long time. We always lose a few fair weather friends with every superstar departure, but that means nothing, because what remains is us, the team in its badge, the fans, supporters and well-wishers. A few haters in the mix, of course, but the show must go on, and so it shall. The next month will be an experience, I reckon. Hopefully a positive one. We keep our eyes and ears on these PSG streets, and there are more episodes coming. We are hopefully getting back to the old rhythm bit by bit. The summer is always a special case, and it varies how much club football there is to talk about. Until next PSG Review, do take care. This is all for now. Peace.